everyone. Greetings from Zagreb, Croatia. I've been here for a couple weeks. Coming to Zagreb is special for me because it reminds me of my mom, because she was born in Zagreb, so this is kind of my motherland. I want to tell you about a song by Depeche Mode that I was reminded of and how it relates to our life in this world. So the other day I was walking to the library. Nothing so special happened on my way to the library except for the relatively beautiful scenery of Zagreb. When I was at the library, and the reason why I'm going to the library is because I am spending the last 100 yard dash before the finish line of this marathon, so to speak. I've been in for months and months and months. Actually, it's a year-long project. Years it's been on in the works. A translation of one of my favorite mentors, Hridayananda Das Goswami's Bhagavad Gita study guide, which he wrote in English in 2000, like about 5-6 years ago. And I've been working on a French translation, so that's what I've been doing, finishing the last few chapters of editing. So anyway, so as I was walking through the bookshelves, in the aisles where there's bookshelves, there was a little poster there, a little printout of a meme where there's a guy and a girl and they're trying to figure out why the printer's jammed, and it's kind of really corny, I think, but he says, or she says, it says, I just can't get enough, I just can't get enough. And then he says, oh, it's because it's in Depeche Mode. So if you may know, Depeche Mode was a super famous band in the 1980s. When I was like 13, 14, 15, Depeche Mode was like the big band of the day. And they had that one song, which I used to sing along with, called I Just Can't Get Enough. And that's what I want to talk about, because when I saw that, I was like, wow, actually, I've known this song for 30 years, but it never really, dawned in me. There's another song from the 1980s by Tears for Fears called Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And in retrospect, already many years I've been thinking about that song occasionally and how apt it is to a spiritual understanding of the world, and how true it is that in this world everybody basically wants to rule over others and control others. Everybody wants to rule the world. But here in Depeche Mode song, the same sort of wisdom applies. I just can't get enough. Another song, since we're on the topic of songs, is the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, I can't get no satisfaction. Same sort of thing. So you have this song like I just can't get enough, and you got people singing it, I just can't get enough, I just can't get enough, and it doesn't dawn in most of our minds that, wait a second, why should it be like that? Why should it be that I just can't get enough? Like, why do I have to always be in a situation of feeling unsatisfied and unfulfilled and incomplete? Because obviously, if you were feeling totally satisfied and complete, you wouldn't be singing. The very fact of singing something like, I can't get no satisfaction, or I just can't get enough, is proof that you're not satisfied. And so the sad thing here is that we've all sort of capitulated to our fate. In other words, we've kind of like accepted what seems to most of us to be a unavoidable destiny, namely that we just can't get enough in this world. We can't be satisfied. But why should you be, satisfied with mediocrity? And why should you not believe that it is possible to live a life where you do get enough, in the sense of you are satisfied, right? And let me tell you that I believe it is possible. It is possible. But we have to understand the dynamics of how objects of the senses and senses work in this world, because the whole thing about yearning for more and more and more is mediated through what? Through the medium of your senses, your eyes, your nose. You can't get enough of beautiful girls, seeing beautiful girls. You can't get enough of of nice smells or cocaine or whatever. You can't get enough of pleasing sounds that titillate your sense of hearing. You can't get enough sex. you can't get enough, you know, it all basically boils, you can't get enough fame and you know, and followers. So it really is all mediated through our senses, and our senses that basically wander and try to, you know, control and yeah, basically put their claws, so to speak, on sense objects, the objects that correspond to our senses. So I want to quote a verse from the Bhagavad Gita to you. For those of you who don't know what the Bhagavad Gita is, it's the greatest text of wisdom, I would say, in the world, spoken by God himself. And if you don't have a copy, the links in the description of my favorite editions are there. Check it out. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the, I forgot which chapter, I think third chapter, God says, listen to this, he says, attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings. So in other words, God's acknowledging that we all are under the sway of the sense objects that our senses connect to, right? And there's two things that happen. We either become attracted by certain types of sense objects, or we become repulsed by certain sense objects. For example, you know, you see some cow stool, not cow stool, that's special. For example, you see some dog stool in the street. It's a sense object. Now, for 99.9% of us, we're repulsed by that. It's like, yuck, it smells bad, etc. And you see or you smell, I don't know, a nice ice cream cone or a nice piece of chocolate or whatever, and then your senses are attracted to it. So there's this attraction, repulsion, right? And we all are subject to that. But God says, but one should not fall under the control of the senses and sense objects because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. They're stumbling blocks. Buddhists also teach that, you know, that attachment to sense objects is the cause of suffering, right? And that attachment is born out of, this is another kind of topic, but those of you who've listened to my, you know, little videos know that there's this notion of the three modes of nature described a little bit further out in the Bhagavad Gita. And these three sort of influences, cosmic influences that influence everything and every one of us in all spheres of life. And the symptom of one of those modes, namely the mode of passion, is this constant hankering, this constant unsatisfied hankering to get sense objects. And that mode of passion, by definition, is not satisfying. By definition, you know, begins with some titillation of the senses and ends in suffering. And by definition, just can never quench one's deep longing for peace and satisfaction. So as long as you're, you know, searching for pleasure through your senses, technically, according to God in the Bhagavad Gita, you're never going to be satisfied. You're never going to be fully satisfied. And I mean, I'm talking to myself here also, obviously, but I'm telling you also too. So as long as you think that sense objects in and of, you know, just by themselves are going to give you that deep fulfillment, you're an illusion, and it's just never going to happen, and you're going to keep singing that song, I just can't get enough, I just can't get enough. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is to see sense objects in relationship to God, to live a life dedicated to God, to use one's senses in service to God. In other words, when you divert all your senses and your sense objects that you're attracted to in connection with devotion to God, beginning and ending with the central activity of chanting God's names on a regular basis, believe it or not, then you feel deeply satisfied. Then you have a deep satisfaction because your senses are no longer contacting temporary objects that give you temporary fleeting satisfaction, but you're contacting them in connection with an eternal loving being, namely God. And therefore, then your whole life, your whole consciousness becomes transformed from temporary and transient to eternal. It's a longer topic. I have a channel that specifically talks about that. It's called Easy Bhakti. The link is also in the description. Ouch. But in short, the lesson of the day is, if you want to stop singing, I just can't, then we have to become God conscious. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. And remember, we are much more than our physical minds and bodies.